My HOA. Karen walked into my backyard like she owned the weather, and then she painted big red X's across my bees' homes like she was tagging a crime scene. If you'd told me that morning I'd end the week watching her run down my driveway, flailing a designer blazer at a cloud of very angry insects, I'd have laughed. If you'd told me that 3 weeks later she'd be escorted out of an HOA meeting in handcuffs, I'd have asked what you were smoking. But life has a sense of theater, and sometimes it hands you a script so absurd you can't look away. So here's the thing: I kept bees, 3 sky blue boxes tucked behind the roses. Italian honeybees, the polite ones, the ignore a human unless you're swinging a machete kind. 2 years of hobby, a few jars of honey for neighbors, and a garden that looked like it belonged in a magazine because everything was pollinated to death. Legal registered with the local beekeepers. Neighbors, informed neighbors happy. I wore the suit on weekends, checked frames, harvested a little, smiled at the low hum of thousands of tiny workers doing the literal work of life. And then Karen appeared. HOA president, self-appointed grammar cop of paint colors and lawn heights, the lady who measured other people's grass with a ruler and kept a pair of binoculars in her car like she was on suburban stakeout. She marched into my yard without knocking, arms crossed, lip curled, as if I'd been running a tiger sanctuary. "Those are beehives," she said, not asking, accusing. She'd gotten a complaint, she said. She'd file with the board. They'd have them removed. I explained county regs, permits, the Beekeeping Association. She waved all that off. "HOA standards," she said with the kind of certainty people use to stop conversations. 2 days later, I got a letter at my door: remove them in 7 days or fines. Formal, polite, smug. And 3 days after my polite reply that county law trumped HOA bylaws, she came back, this time with a camera and 2 friends, and spray-painted huge red X's across my hives. On camera, audio, and everything. You could hear her talk about marking them for removal. That vandalism killed 2 colonies overnight. The 3rd limped along. I sat in my car watching footage and felt the lesson flip from mere annoyance to a cold, clinical rage. Now, most people go to court. I did the only American thing left. I made a plan. I called Frank, 60-something beekeeper, knows bees like a carpenter knows wood, and someone Karen had annoyed before. Frank had some spare hives, 3 calm colonies in one, and you could hear the smile over the line, one spicy colony he'd been trying to mellow out. Hybrid defensive, the kind that pursue threats. He'd been trying to requeen them, but they were still feisty. He offered them cheap. I said yes. I didn't tell him everything. I didn't need to. I placed 4 boxes in a new spot, not hidden behind the shrubs, but along the side yard by the gate, plainly visible from the driveway. 3 neutral, 1 the spicy one, unpainted, indistinguishable unless you knew where to look. I placed a tiny mark only I'd notice on the bottom of the spicy hive. It wasn't elegant. It was deliberate. And then I waited, which is to say I watched my security feed while trying to act like a normal person buying groceries. 4 days later, Karen strolled up the driveway looking like she owned the day. She slipped through the side gate eyes on the back fence where my old hives had been. She walked right past the new boxes 3 feet away. She reached and knocked hard on one of them, like knocking on a neighbor's door to make them see she'd been there. That knock was the worst possible thing she could do. For 3 seconds, nothing. And then the entrance emptied and the hive poured out like a broken faucet, dozens, then hundreds of bees. They went straight to her. They chased, pursued, not the polite kind, but aggressive territorial creatures that don't take back off as advice. She screamed. She ran. She swatted a blazer like a towel at an aquarium full of eels. She leapt into her car with bees in the cabin and peeled out, leaving skids and hysteria in her rear view. And I laughed. Out loud in a grocery parking lot, a short, ugly bark of laughter that felt like both release and admission. This woman who'd made my life small and sharp was small and sharp for once. But the laughter was complicated because by the time sirens and a squad car pulled up, my smugness turned cold. Karen was on a tailgate getting looked at by EMTs. Animal control eyed my setup with suspicion. My footage showed her vandalism, but the animals inspector is a different species of authority. They want to test the bees. They want to know what kind. This is the twist. And it's the one that makes you stop and ask whether revenge ever sits well next to consequence. Those spicy bees weren't just defensive, they were Africanized hybrids. Frank had misjudged how quickly they'd reveal their heritage. He was supposed to have them certified and didn't. And then in the worst possible compounding of errors, Frank remembers, after I've watched Karen run screaming, that Karen has a documented severe allergy to bee stings. She'd had a near-fatal reaction years before. If those bees did more than a bruise, that could be manslaughter territory. My little setup had become a legal and moral landmine. I felt that panic like a pit. Then my neighbor texted he'd seen Karen running, muttering lawsuits and ruin. The police asked for statements. Animal control wanted to take samples. And my phone buzzed with Frank's, "Call me. Emergency." He told me what I just learned. Africanized genetic special permits required possible destruction, heavy fines, criminal exposure if someone's allergic reaction went catastrophic. The neat line between karmic justice and criminal negligence had blurred into mud. I went inside to fetch the footage I planned to use: Karen's trespass, her spray paint, her vandalism. As I looked through older clips, I noticed a pattern. The neighbor who'd once lent me a mower, the one who'd texted me, said she'd been on my property a dozen times. Night footage showed her snooping flashlight, sweeping, even digging a little. In another clip, she had what looked like a metal detector, methodical sweeps along the back corner near the fence. My stomach rolled. Why was the HOA president spending 40 minutes in my yard at night? County records filled the blanks. The previous owners had been in a legal fight with the HOA embezzlement, missing $40,000. The treasurer accused the HOA president of involvement, a messy, settled, simmering mess that led to the treasurer quietly leaving. The dates lined up. Karen had been president back then. She had motive beyond bee paranoia. She'd been looking for evidence, maybe a lockbox, maybe a trail, and for some reason she thought it was on my property. Her bee complaint was a pretext. The trespass and vandalism were cover for something else. Suddenly, the story shifted from petty neighbor warfare to criminal suspicion. Karen wasn't just a bully. She might have been protecting a secret. I sat in my backyard and did the math, or greed dipped in ethics, whichever you prefer. I could blackmail her, I could hide the box, I could hand it to the police anonymously, or I could do something weird and hard, actually try to fix things. I called Frank and ordered him to remove the spicy colony that night. He came. We took the aggressive hive to a licensed handler. I copied every clip of Karen's trespasses, printed the court documents, and in the quiet between panic and resolve, I dug where she'd been digging. 2 feet down, my shovel thunked against metal. A lockbox. Bank statements, transfer records, notes, exact proof of missing HOA funds, and signatures implicating her. I sat on the grass holding decades of someone's theft in palms that still smelled faintly of beeswax, and realized 2 things. 1, I could destroy this woman the way she'd been destroying people's lives. 2, I could hand it to the cops and let the system try to be what it promises to be. I chose the system. Frank and I moved the aggressive hive to a licensed facility. I went to animal control early, explained the relocation, handed over Frank's number. I walked into the police station with the lockbox and every clip and document I'd found. The detective went from polite to alert in 12 seconds flat. 2 weeks later, Karen was led out in cuffs. The news ran the embezzlement story. The HOA voted her out and banned her. Animal control confirmed my remaining hives were legal and fine. The HOA apologized and waived dues for a couple of years. I read their letter and felt nothing really. Not victory, not glee, just exhausted relief and a new kind of guilt. Here's the moral, and I'll try to do it without sounding like a self-help pamphlet. Revenge feels like a neat, immediate fix, but it's messy, and it rarely stays within the target. When you aim to wound someone who's been hurting you, you often give the universe a chance to hand you a mirror, and sometimes that mirror makes you flinch. I got what felt like justice. The person who'd terrorized a neighborhood fell hard. But I also put aggressive bees in someone's path and watched fear and pain unfold on a human face. I could have avoided it. I chose not to. That choice sits with me. So where does that leave us? With karma. Yes, but also with consequences and complexity. I'm glad the stolen money was found, that a lot of people got closure, that the HOA stopped pretending it was above the law. I'm not proud of how I helped make that happen. I'm proud the evidence came to light. I regret the method that almost made me an accomplice to something far worse. Now I'll leave you with something a little uncomfortable when justice and vengeance look the same. How do we choose which to follow? Is it ever okay to tilt the scales yourself when the system is slow, corrupt, or blind? Or does taking matters into your own hands inevitably make you the villain you were fighting? Tell me, have you ever felt forced into that corner? Drop your city in the comments. Tell me a time when you watched someone get what they deserved, or when you changed your mind about getting revenge. And let's talk about where justice ends and revenge begins.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video. Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.